It's still there, lurking in the corner of his eye. The driver can't bear to look at it. His hands tighten on the steering wheel. His breath quickens, but he doesn't dare glance back. He tries to avoid the sight, averting his gaze from the rearview mirror. Every flicker of movement at the edge of his vision sets his pulse racing. It's been the same all week. No escape, no reprieve, no moment of peace from the specter that seems to be following him everywhere he goes. He can't even tell anyone about it. They'd think he was crazy. He's starting to think they might be right. All he can do is tell himself it's just the guilt, the weight of what happened pressing down on him. He's still in shock from the accident that happened the week before. He's convinced it'll go away with time. Won't it? Yet every time he looks, the driver sees it. The sign lingers, hovering like a shadow that won't let him go. At first, it was subtle. Just a glimpse in the wing mirror when he pulled over outside work or stopped at traffic lights. He thought nothing of it at first. Just a stop sign, one of thousands, unremarkable and easy to ignore. Until he began to see it everywhere. Always behind him, flickering into existence where it hadn't been just moments before. What seemed like tricks of the mind start becoming a looming, uncomfortable image. It couldn't be someone messing with him, right? No one had been there that night. He was certain of that. No one had seen him. He hadn't meant to. He was just so tired, working late. His eyelids had drooped for what felt like only a second, maybe two. Trembling as he closes in on the intersection, the driver takes a fearful glance at his rear view, expecting to see the sign closer than ever. But it's not behind him anymore. It's in front. He slams on the brakes, foot crashing down with the force of a cinder block. The tires shriek against the pavement, and the car jolts to a violent, gut-wrenching halt. The foreboding sign looms ahead, its four-letter command offering a painful reminder of what he should have done on that night. The driver swears he can almost see a figure standing next to it and squints to look closer. Is that... It can't be. It's either his mind playing tricks on him, or it's a vengeful spirit. Either way, it's drawn his focus for a second too long. The horn of the oncoming truck is deafening, but the driver hears it too late. Too late to react. Too late to stop what's coming. The impact shatters his car's windows, sending a shower of glass through the vehicle. In seconds, the car has been flipped. Pain shoots through every part of the driver's body as he dangles upside down in the wreckage, still buckled into the front seat. His vision blurs, and the darkness starts to claim him for the final time. Through the shattered windshield, he stares at the spot where he swore he saw it, the sign telling him to stop. He doesn't stay alive long enough to realize there's never been a stop sign at this intersection. Sometime in late 2019, Wilma Greggs vanished from work, right in the middle of an ordinary day. Her sudden disappearance left more questions than answers. As her manager, Lisa, scrambled to track her down, she began piecing together fragments of Wilma's recent behavior. Odd changes, subtle but unsettling. The moment she realized Wilma was missing, she attempted to get in contact with her via text message. She empathized with the recent difficulties that the woman had been experiencing, but reminded her that she couldn't just abandon work on a whim. Wilma responded, telling her boss she'd forgotten to call and that, as soon as she got home, she had passed out owing to exhaustion. This was the initial indicator for Lisa that something wasn't right. Wilma's car was parked outside the office. When informed of this, Wilma responded saying that she had walked home. Her house was situated 12 miles from her workplace, a 5-hour walk. And Wilma had walked the entire way. Naturally concerned, Lisa questioned her over this. If her car wasn't working, Wilma could have asked one of her colleagues to drive her or taken public transport. But Wilma explained that her car was working fine. It wasn't that the vehicle had broken down. It was that she couldn't drive it. Because there was a stop sign in her car. Wilma was compelled to do what it told her, so she obeyed. She stopped using her car entirely. Growing increasingly concerned, Lisa offered to come and take Wilma out for the evening. She offered to cover the cost of whichever restaurant they went to. They could even walk in the park if it would be of help. Wilma refused, and at Lisa's insistence, she told her boss she couldn't leave the house. There was a stop sign outside her window, She couldn't go outside. Out of worry for her friend and co-worker's mental state, Lisa attempted to call Wilma to talk to her directly. The call was immediately rejected. Wilma went on to explain that she couldn't make phone calls either. Lisa tried to get her friend to open up to her, aware that she'd been overworking herself, possibly to cope with, or to avoid coping with, what she was going through. But Wilma responded saying that she still couldn't answer the phone. A stop sign had told her not to. Earlier that day, while still at the office, Wilma had exited her cubicle to get a cup of coffee. Hearing the phone ring, she quickly returned, expecting to answer the call to a customer as normal. But when she came back, there was a stop sign by her desk. Seeing the sign had forced her to leave work, and having seen the same stop sign so many times throughout the day, Wilma had become convinced it was haunting her. By this point, Lisa had realized that Wilma could have been on the cusp of a serious mental breakdown, possibly owing to the stress and grief she was going through. Instead of making an issue out of her leaving work, Lisa was determined to help. She filled out a 30-day leave of absence form for her coworker. All she needed was Wilma's signature. Maybe some time away from work to process everything would make a difference to Wilma, and her erratic behavior would stop. Wilma only agreed to sign the slip if Lisa came to her, which her boss was happy to do, until Wilma urged her not to visit. She'd changed on a dime. The stop sign was at her front door now. No visitors. Thomas would agree with her. She had to follow traffic laws. At the mention of Thomas, Lisa asked Wilma if she had told William yet. She said that she would, after William's birthday. A short while later, Craig Dillard, an employee of Tillman Funeral Home and Crematory, handed over his letter of resignation to his boss. In his letter, Dillard explained that he was, and always had been, a devout and pious follower of the Christian faith. He believed that over the course of his career at Tillman Funeral Home, he was doing a good job. He'd taken pride in handling the bodies of the deceased with care and took preparing them for burial seriously. Dillard had always believed that taking on a job like this one was good for his soul. Craig Dillard had believed that by helping men and women say their final goodbyes to their loved ones, guiding them from the world of the living to the gates of heaven, he would be seen as virtuous in the eyes of God. But suddenly, he no longer believed. He thought he'd received a sign from the Lord to give up what he'd dedicated decades of his life to. While preparing the body of a recently deceased crossing guard for burial, Dillard turned around and froze. A sign loomed over him, stark and foreboding, as he checked the body for signs of decomposition. In his letter, Dillard reflected that in life, the man had directed traffic on the roads, and in death, he had guided the course of Dillard's own life choices. He declared that if God had given him a sign to leave his occupation for good, he had to listen. A sign telling him to stop. On October 4, 2019, a writing assignment was handed in by a student at Wellington Elementary School. The students had all been instructed to write a short piece introducing themselves and describing something of interest that they had seen. One of the students, 6-year-old William Greggs, turned in his assignment to his teacher, Mrs. Pollock. In it, William talked about his parents, his mother Wilma, and his father, Thomas. When describing the cool thing he'd seen for the assignment, William recounted finding a stop sign in a room at his family home. It had seemed, to the child, that the sign was looking directly at him. Every time William entered a room at school, the stop sign would be there, waiting for him. He couldn't explain how, but he started to believe it was moving freely whenever he wasn't looking directly at it. In his assignment, William described the object as a kind of guardian angel, one that seemed to exist solely to protect him from danger. Though he wrote in his assignment that it didn't stop bad guys being bad, he also mentioned wishing that the stop sign had wings so that it could make cars stop. William talked more about his dad, Thomas, who had worked as a crossing guard. The sign that Thomas used didn't have wings, but it did tell cars when to go and when to stop. Thomas also had a really loud whistle. William remarked that he thought his dad looked cool and recalled a time when Wilma had driven them past Thomas's post. His dad had spotted them and waved, his smile beaming through the busy intersection. William loved his dad. William mentioned that he hadn't seen his dad in a while and wondered where he might be. It just so happened that the day William wrote the assignment was his birthday, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the stop signs appearing in rooms around the school were his dad's doing. He imagined it was all part of a playful joke, a way for his dad to make him laugh even when he wasn't around. But it wasn't just at school. William wrote that he'd even seen the stop sign in his bedroom at night. He ended the assignment saying that when he next saw his dad, he planned to give him the biggest hug. On September 30th, 2019, a clerk at South Palm Beach County Courthouse, one Frank Smith, was pulling out of his driveway ready to depart for work. As he reversed, his rear bumper hit something, denting it. He'd checked his rearview mirrors and was sure there hadn't been anything behind the car. Looking again, Frank could see nothing. Whatever it was had vanished. Later, several of Frank Smith's neighbors made non-emergency calls to local police after witnessing him sprinting out of his home, screaming into the night. Over the phone, one neighbor had reportedly heard Smith screaming, "Leave me alone! Please! I didn't mean to!" Believing there to be some kind of domestic disturbance occurring at Smith's property, a wellness check was made by police officers. A statement was taken, and Smith explained that he had woken in the dead of night to see something standing over him. On October 2nd, only a few days later, another unusual incident was reported from South Palm Beach County Courthouse. During the working day, employees at the courthouse witnessed Frank Smith rushing out of the staff bathroom with his work pants around his ankles. He was noted as being in hysterics and yelling incoherently about not being able to go in peace, and that someone wouldn't leave him alone. Shortly after the incident, Frank Smith received an official reprimand for indecency. 2 days later, Frank Smith was found alone in a courtroom half an hour before a case that he was overseeing. He seemed to be speaking to someone or something he perceived to be sitting in the judge's seat, presiding over the empty courtroom. Smith prostrated himself before the vacant seat and appeared to be begging for forgiveness. Upon his discovery by colleagues at the courthouse, Smith fled the premises. No one saw him again, until a traffic collision later that day. While driving, Frank Smith had abruptly stopped his car at an intersection, right in the path of another oncoming vehicle. The resulting collision claimed his life. The reasons for his erratic behavior and that of Wilma Greggs, Craig Dillard, and William Greggs has all since been attributed to the same anomalous occurrence. Each of them had encountered SCP-5842. The SCP Foundation has documented all known sightings of SCP-5842 and have determined that they have been isolated to a single area, 66 miles north of Miami, Florida, within West Palm Beach County. SCP-5842 is only known to have appeared in the village of Wellington, Florida, and the Foundation has already implemented a cover story that these were the result of a practical joke as a way to avoid any suspicion arising among local residents. However, the area remains under Foundation surveillance in case additional sightings are made. SCP-5842 appears to be a standard North American stop sign, having an octagonal-shaped face, red with a white border and white lettering. Nothing visually distinguishes it from other non-anomalous traffic signs. However, its primary anomalous property has been ascertained from various incident reports. The object appears to be able to disappear and reappear in locations via unknown means. Initially, researchers at the SCP Foundation believed the appearances of SCP-5842 to be random. It was noted that the anomalous stop sign bore some resemblance to another anomaly. So, an investigation was launched to determine whether or not there was a connection between them. SCP-1047, also known among research staff as the vengefully ironic street signs, are a collection of traffic signs that each possess anomalous properties that correlate to the specific orders given by each one. Among them are SCP-1047-1, a one-way sign that has been observed to reorient the force of gravity in the direction of the arrow on the sign. SCP-1047-3 is a no parking sign that causes any living being within its radius to be in constant motion and unable to stop. An anomalous merge sign, SCP-1047-4, forces all vertebrate creatures nearby to spontaneously bond together, forming one composite being. Another instance, SCP-1047-5, is a sign urging to yield, in its case making anyone near it to become subservient to anyone that offers them a direct command. And SCP-1047-6 is a speed limit sign with a denomination of 55 miles per hour. This causes the speed of light in the surrounding area to be reduced to this specified speed of 55 miles per hour. There does exist, within the collection of vengefully ironic street signs, another anomalous stop sign referred to as SCP-1047-2. When exposed to this sign, any living vertebrate will suffer an instantaneous and irreversible state of total bodily paralysis. SCP Foundation anomalous research teams were initially convinced that SCP-5842 was some as-yet unseen variation of the numerous instances of SCP-1047. However, its anomalous function seemed to be considerably different to that of SCP-1047-2 and almost closer to that of SCP-1047-5, the anomalous yield sign. Based on the various eyewitness accounts of SCP-5842, this anomalous stop sign could compel them to stop and reconsider their actions. In the case of Wilma Greggs and Craig Dillard, encountering SCP-5842 affected their behavior to such a degree that they acted largely out of character, abandoning their jobs after witnessing the anomalous stop sign. According to the text message logs recovered from Wilma Gregg's phone by the Foundation, the anomalous influence of SCP-5842 was potent enough to compel her to act against her usual behavior. This included walking 5 hours to her home from the office rather than taking her car, deliberately avoiding roads, and sticking to public sidewalks and footpaths. Heading to the village of Wellington, Florida, Foundation research teams attempted to gather more information about SCP-5842. Conducting covert interviews with local residents didn't provide much in the way of results. However, one researcher Quadraginta, seemed to quickly determine a possible reason as to why. Up to this point, the Foundation had been treating sightings of SCP-5842 as if it were another instance of SCP-1047, not as a potentially entirely separate anomaly that might have its own mode of operation. In short, it was an altogether different type of anomalous road sign. Adjusting their approach, the SCP Foundation accessed historical road maps of the local area from multiple years and cross-referenced the placement of stop signs. The goal was to determine whether SCP-5842 had manifested in the past or been documented in any official road surveys conducted in Wellington. This began a laborious process of inspecting each stop sign location within the village against the locations on road maps of the area. Researchers found that almost all the signs on their maps corresponded to a real sign, each at its exact location listed, except for one. A single stop sign was found missing from its designated location, a discrepancy that stood out, as it was consistently recorded on Wellington's road maps. Even the oldest available maps of the area, dating back to the earliest records of modern roads, indicated its presence. This suggested that the sign had existed for as long as the local road network itself. The site of the missing sign itself appeared to have sustained damage during some kind of accident, so the Foundation queried this with local traffic police. They were able to confirm that an incident had occurred on September 27, 2019. The sign had been damaged and removed as a result, pending replacement. The Wellington Police Department also reported another unusual incident 1 week later. A local courtroom clerk inexplicably stopped his car in the middle of an intersection, directly in the path of oncoming traffic, despite there being no stop sign present at the location. That proved to be the crucial missing piece of the puzzle. Taking another look at the eyewitness reports of SCP-5842, researcher Quadraginta was able to make sense of it all. There had been no appearances of an anomalous stop sign prior to the incident mentioned by the Wellington Police Department. The road maps of the village confirmed that. Now that they knew what had happened in Wellington just before SCP-5842 started appearing, Quadraginta realized that the sightings hadn't been random at all. They'd been connected. Having determined exactly what was going on, researcher Quadraginta and the rest of the Foundation team concurred there was little they could do. After implementing the cover story, they somberly departed from Wellington, leaving the anomaly uncontained. The last known sighting of SCP-5842 occurred sometime after October 4, 2019. It was witnessed by a groundskeeper at the South Florida National Cemetery who saw the anomalous stop sign leaning over a tombstone. Before disappearing, it had seemed to be severely dented and damaged. Since vanishing, there have been no subsequent sightings of SCP-5842. The tombstone where the stop sign was last seen bore a simple inscription. It read, Thomas Greggs, October 4, 1990 to September 27, 2019, loving husband and father. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-3052, Living Stick Figure, Disturbed.